Hello, I'm Rob Price. This season, we're exploring agentic AI from the perspectives of those driving its evolution. Welcome to Futurise.
Hello, I'm Nicolas Babin. I've been involved with new tech since a long time ago, over 35 years. And today I'm a digital EU ambassador for the European Commission. And I also I'm an AI veteran because I've been involved with AI since exactly 1996 when I started with Sony and we launched the IBO robot, which is based on AI and which was launched actually in 1999. But we started working on it when I joined back in 1996. So very, very happy to be here today and to be sharing some experience with you.
Nicolas, and it's a pleasure to welcome you as well. I mean, we spoke before Christmas, and I think one of the things that we were
Yes.
talking about then was, well, you've done quite a lot of startup businesses, haven't you? I mean, you've clearly got the bug for creating new ventures. Tell us a bit more about that.
Okay. Yes, I started as part also of another life. I started about 26, exactly 26 startups. 11 of them are still alive, and I'm still involved as a board member, either advisor board member or director, board of directors member on seven of them. So 26, 15 of them unfortunately don't exist anymore, and still involved with seven. And a lot of them, I would say about 80% of them are within the AI activity and the others are also a lot in healthcare because that's an area that I really enjoy and that I've worked for many years, and so that's why yes. But so it's 26. So everything that goes around the 26 companies, fundraising, leadership, management. So that's why now as a consultant, I also help other startuppers to create and expand and develop their startups.
And I can only admire the boundless energy and enthusiasm and passion that must have flown into that because 18 months into my first, I know how hard startups are. So to keep coming back for more is just amazing. What was there a driving reason behind kind of that passion? I mean, what's your goal with them? What do you want to? I mean, I appreciate that the kind of consistent theme around AI, but why do you keep coming back?
Well, number one is I always had a full-time job, and for 15 years of that with Sony, as I mentioned. So first, actually in the in-car navigation system with digital mapping, then with IBO, as I mentioned, the AI-based robot, and then as head of communication for the whole of Europe, so all type of communication and product marketing as well. So this was my the and I don't mean that in a bad sense, but my boring self, where I was an employee that was really appreciated by many companies, including Sony, obviously. And on the side, I always had an entrepreneur mind. I started the first startup was back in '96. Again, it was called and a company called ISMAP, and we worked. It was located in France, and at the time I was based in London, and we completely created a company and developed it. And so from that, I just found it fascinating about the innovation, about the energy, as you said, it's all about that, and also convincing people that once you've done the proof of concept and that once you've proven that your idea works, then I love talking to people. I love communicating, and this was really something that really got me. And so every time after two or three successes, friends will come along and say, "Oh, I have a great idea," or I will go to friends and say, "Hey, look, why don't we go into this area?" And that's how it continued. I mean, basically, and today I stopped at 26 because the last one, even though it was the best project I've ever had, which was a diabetes management system called diabelife.com. And it was a great app helping diabetes patients to be autonomous. But unfortunately, we had a bad experience with an investor. He committed to 3 million euros and never gave the money. He said he didn't have the money really at the end. So unfortunately, we had to stop that company. But from that time, I lost a lot of money, obviously, and therefore I decided to stop and help as a consultant startups to create the company. So even though, yeah, I myself was involved with 26, I've helped others as well. But it's just about the energy and the need for that energy, to be honest with you.
And I know that because we were talking about agentic AI when we last spoke. So in
Yes.
terms of supporting some of those businesses and advising, then they're firmly in the agentic space, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. So it's anything around AI, to be honest. It's not only about agentic, it's also about symbolic AI, reinforcement learning. It's about everything. I mean, what we had put into DIB Live was a lot about reinforcement learning as well. But when you think about it, back in 1996, it was not called agentic at the time, but we had made this robot, which was frankly an agent. It
Yeah,
was totally autonomous. It was making its own decision.
yeah,
So obviously the technology was not as advanced as it is today, but really when you talk about autonomously making decision, Aibo would suddenly decide to take a picture of
yeah.
whatever he would see at the time because he had a camera in its nose. So when I know today everybody's talking about agentic, and I think it's making great progress with obviously the help of LLMs being now more available every day, and also technology that is getting more mature. But LLM is just a very small part of what agentic AI models can be. And what we did with Aibo, I really find it again. So that's why, whether it's AI was agentic AI was it's any type of startups, and I created one with two friends of mine in the coffee area. So nothing to do. I mean, obviously the supply chain was managed by AI and everything, but the idea at the beginning was not about creating an AI-based company. So all these companies have the same DNA. No, it's a startup. It's managed by the same type of people, and that's why it's fascinating. Is really working. And I agree with you. I mean, today is what we see and what we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years. In one sense, it makes me a little bit frustrated because I have to say that I've been involved with AI for almost 29 years now, and for about 26 of these 29 years, nobody would listen to me. Say, yeah, AI, yeah, right, yeah. And then suddenly, OpenAI started to talk about AI, and so now it's all coming into me. But it's fascinating because it's great timing, and it's very exciting to see all these new startups inventing all these new ideas based on the technology that actually was created back in 1950.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I've said this before. I've spoken to a number of people who said, "Ah, yes, well, we were working on multi-agent models in the 1990s, but in terms of kind of from an academic or pattern point of view, but the point is now things are available to actually make that a reality."
That's
So,
exactly.
I mean, I and others, of course, are immersing ourselves in this market, and there are a number of yes, kind of huge organisations making great strides with the AI models, but also many, many more organizations who are using those models to do those things. Given that experience, I mean, 26 startups, if well, indeed, you are talking to others. So what kind of advice would you give to those organizations to do things in the right way? Right way as in, look, you've got to survive commercially, you've got to get the
Yeah.
right clients, you've got to get the right investors. What would your top tips be to those guys?
Well, the number one and the one that makes the most sense is the cash. The cash is the nerve of everything. If you don't have cash as a startup, you're going to start maybe too early to start raising funds, and after that, the company you don't own it anymore. And when you're an entrepreneur, the thing that really gets you going and gets you wake up in the morning is the fact that it's your baby, and you're putting again all your energy in it. And so you have to make sure that you have enough cash from the beginning, and that you start selling as soon as possible, and you start getting customers as soon as possible. But as an investor, for me, I look at three key areas when I used to invest, because as I said, I've stopped a little bit at this stage. The number one is I want to have visionary but down to earth type of founders. it's really important for me, maybe because it's part also of my DNA, to have founders that have a deep understanding of the problem that they are solving. And again, if you don't solve a problem, don't start a startup. that's maybe I should have started with that first tip, because that's really very important, obviously, because otherwise you don't have a product. So understanding of the problem they're solving, coupled with humility to adapt, because they learn and they need to learn, they need to stand out. And so, they're going to adapt, they're going to pivot, they're going to do a lot of things. And so that's really the number one point, is visionary, but down to earth founders. The second point is scalability and real world impact. That's what I looked for. I look for solutions that not only demonstrate technical sophistication, I would say, but also have clear, scalable applications that will solve pressing problems. And again, solve problems. Again, I'm focusing on this. So these founders will have to have the ability to navigate the transition, basically, from proof of concept to full deployment. And that to me is critical. And of course, AgenticAI is definitely within this, but it could be also other type of startups. And the last one that I've been talking about since actually 1996, when we launched IPO, because that was critical at the time, but it still is today and even more of tomorrow, is about ethics and transparency. Obviously, I'm a digital EU ambassador. Europe is really pushing with the AI Act around transparency and trust. And to me, this is critical. So I always look for startups that will have a priority in terms of fairness, explainability, robustness, data governance. It's the founders that will have the embedded ethical considerations from day one will, to me, is a great signal to say that the company is built for sustainability and not just speed. Because of course, you're going to have a return on investment that you want as an investor, and you plan as a 3, 5 or more years. But speed is not essential. You need to start building something. And as an entrepreneur, if you manage your cash well, and you start building your company well and for the future, then you're going to continue owning that company, and you're going to continue on the basis that you have created. That's why I would give so 5 real tips: cash, the solving problem, visionary but down to earth type of founders, scalability and real world impact, and ethics and transparency.
I love the 5, and I've got to kind of follow that point around ethics and transparency, haven't I? Because I mean, where are you at the moment? Are you in France at the moment, or?
I'm in France. Yes, correct.
Yeah. And I know that you're advising some startups in other European countries as well. I think from
correct. Yes.
That different. So yes. There is quite a different approach emerging, isn't there? If we look at the EU AIX versus, well, even kind of what was happening a week ago in the US, or in certainly kind of what's happening today in the US, and of course from Asia. So how do you find that in terms of working with startups, especially? Are they operating solely in Europe? Are they looking to expand, for example, into the US? How are you helping organizations bridge that different environment?
Well, because of my experience, especially with Sony, and even before, my wife is American, so I've lived in and worked in the US for a long time. I've lived and worked in UK, Belgium, Japan, Germany, and France. So, this is how basically my unique selling point, if I could say. Maybe I have others, but at least this is a very important selling point. And so startups approach me to help them develop outside of their home country. So I help German companies to go into the UK or into the US. I help Italian companies also go into the US, because I'm very familiar with the culture. I have to say that lately, obviously, we had high hopes with the US, because at least in California as well, and even the federal government was talking about regulating AI. It looks like it was part of the 100 things that Mr. Trump decided to sign and get rid of. We don't know what's going to happen. Europe is definitely at the forefront in terms of protecting its citizens and its businesses. And I know the first thing you're going to say, well, hang on, what about innovation? And I'll cover innovation in 2 seconds. But with the AI Act, with the Digital Service Act, with the Digital Market Act, we're protecting employees, we're protecting citizens, and we're protecting companies to ensure at least, again, about transparency and trust. And especially with the AI Act, we've identified 4 different types of risks. And on top of one of them is totally unacceptable. That's what we call the social scoring in China, which we will not have in Europe. And the 3 others are managed. The last one is an easy one. Is like when you talk to a chatbot, we want companies to be transparent and say to their clients, you're talking to a chatbot, you're talking to an AI algorithm, so that they're very easy to manage. And the 2 others have you will need to get third-party companies to get involved and audit your system to ensure that at least you don't fall into the first category, as I mentioned. Why it doesn't kill innovation? Because in parallel to what Europe is doing with all this legislation, sorry, that's a difficult one. Europe is also helping startups. And I just returned from the Web Summit in Lisbon, where we actually talked about the program Horizon 2025, and there was Horizon 2020, and the UK is coming back to Europe in terms of being part of these plans, where we have billions of euros to distribute to startups, especially in digital and health. So any type of projects around also space. I mean, there are many other projects, but to me, what really interests me is digital and health. So yes, we're protecting employees, we're protecting citizens, we're protecting companies, but we're also helping companies to get funding. Because what's the difference between Europe and the US, for example, is the access to cash. Again, I'll go back to my first problem. Because in the US it's very easy, and I did 2 or 3 startups in the US, especially in the healthcare industry, and basically you could come with a PowerPoint. Not anymore, but about 5 or 6 years ago, you arrive with a PowerPoint in front of investors. You say, "That's my idea," and they will sign a check for that. So it's things are evolving, obviously, but so that's the big difference between Europe and the US. And what we see now in Europe is actually we are helping companies, and it's not only about a loan or that you have to give back at some stage. It's also grants. So basically, Europe is saying, "Hang on, we like your idea." Obviously, if they like your idea, and of course, because it's Europe, you have to fill out, a lot of forms and ensure that at least your idea is really well explained. But once Europe is behind you, then you have a very solid partner, and they will do everything they can to promote you and ensure that at least the whole European market is open, and that over 26 countries. So it's actually quite interesting. So. Compared, obviously, you have China on the other end, because you mentioned also Asia, and China is really helped by the government. China has a vision, very motivated, and a vision that's really because they want to beat the US. But in terms of AI, they're promoting a lot their companies, they're promoting their projects, their know-how, and they're also helping financially their startups. So, you have these 3 pillars, as I can see them: China, Europe, and the US. It's true that today, in terms of development, AI development, and agentic AI especially, you see agentic AI is a little bit different. I'm sorry, I got carried away on this one. But US and China are definitely the 2 big pillars in terms of AI. Agentic AI, we see actually quite a lot of development in Europe today. And we could say that agentic AI maybe is taking the lead. We're taking the lead in Europe. That's how I would see it.
And I'd really like to explore that, because I mean, over the last week, even we've seen the announcement of Stargate in the US. The UK kind of had a big initiative last week in terms of investment in AI, but a lot of it seems to me to be driven around ever more bigger data centers, ever bigger models, etc., which is part of the story in my mind. but not the whole story in the context of agentic. Agentic can utilize those, but it doesn't necessarily just have to be in the models. I'm interested to explore a bit more about your point then around what you're doing differently. So what might be some of the interesting things that you're seeing in terms of patterns or approaches that are coming out of Europe?
Well, so to me, I see actually mainland Europe. I'm sorry, but I mean, I shouldn't say mainland because I'm so used to saying mainland, but including UK being part. I'm not talking about political issues here or anything, but I see it becoming really a hub for agentic AI, at least in terms of innovation. And because I've seen several trends, I would maybe three trends that really stand out about AI and sustainability. Where I see a lot of many European startups that are focusing on how agentic AI can be used to tackle pressing environmental challenges, such as optimizing energy grids or enhancing supply chain sustainability. So that's one of them. The second one that I see, which to me is maybe, obviously I can't say it's more important than the environmental challenges that we see, but human-centric design. Anything that's human-centric to me is essential. Back in 1996, when we started to work on IBO, the first time I got IBO out was at the Trafford Centre in Manchester, and a chap jumped on IBO and ripped its head off and say, I don't want robots to replace me. And he was right. But we had not anticipated that. Back in 1996, there was no AI, there was nothing. And so human-centric design to me is really important. And I see European companies are leading the way in embedding ethical principles into AI deployments and development. The EU regulatory framework will encourage or is encouraging today startups to focus on explainability and fairness, which sounds key to me to scaling specific AI responsibility. And the last one, which is also extremely important, it's collaborative ecosystems. You know, what we see is Europe is really fostering a collaboration between startups, corporates, and research institutions. I don't know if you've heard about this program called Gaia X. I suggest you have a look on the web. It's the initiative like Gaia X, which is a promotion of federated data infrastructure that enable agentic AI solutions to thrive, basically, in a more open, secure, and interoperable environment. So those 3 points, again, you know, AI and sustainability, human-centric design, and collaborative ecosystems, I think Europe is ahead of the game. So that's why, you know, I started by saying you have the two big pillars, US and China. But actually, I honestly believe that if we talk about agentic AI, we're ahead of the game at this stage today.
Excellent, and great mention for Gaia X as well. I do believe that a couple of my ex-Atos colleagues once upon a time kind of were in the early days of it as well.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot about that, of course.
Yeah, cool. So let's bring all that together, I guess, in terms of finishing off. I mean, it's just such a fabulous story, fabulous experience. And I think the thing that I've experienced over the last 18 months is actually you need people out there who've been through that journey before, who can provide it's a roller coaster. Any startup, I think, is a roller coaster. And therefore finding ways to get around the challenges that arise, being able to hook into that broader experience, and indeed, as you say, broader ecosystems. I think kind of the incubators, accelerators, other organizations that are there to support are a fundamental part of that. But if there was one message that you want to finish on in terms of, for all those founders that are out there thinking, how do I kind of play a part in this future agentic ecosystem wherever it is in the world, what would be that message that you would message of hope that you would leave them with?
Yeah, well, I always leave that same message over and over again, but I think it's the most important one. It's a sentence I learned when I lived in Tokyo for Sony, and there's a Japanese saying that states you need to fall down 7 times in order to get up 8. So it's about resilience, obviously. Today, you know, if I were again an entrepreneur, or at least starting my own startup, the first thing I would look into is like, what problems do we have today and how can we solve it? Once you have that covered, and you know you're going to be taken down 7 times, but you're going to get it back up 8, then you have the key to your success. It's that simple. And people are going to say, oh, he's naive and everything. No, it's don't think it's complicated. Once you have your product, you believe in it, you have your passion, you have your energy. That's how it works. And if you have somebody who keeps hitting you on the head, well, you get back up. Like with many of my companies, we will go to meetings with investors and it will say, oh, no, this is never going to work. Well, investors don't know. I mean, obviously they've been involved with other ventures and everything. They have the money, so you need to listen to them, but they don't know what they don't have the gut feeling. They don't have your energy. They don't have your passion. They don't have your background. And that's why, don't listen to the people outside of your ecosystem, as we were mentioning this, but just trust your little voice, your inner voice, and keep going. That's the only way it works.
I found it's almost like trying to publish a book. It's
It is.
one day somebody will want to publish the book.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to find the right publisher.
You're absolutely right. With my book, it was exactly the same. I sent it to many publishers. Every time they wanted me to get rid of one article, one chapter, or whatever. At the end, I said, you know what? I'm going to KDP on Amazon, Kindle Direct Publishing, and I did it on my own. It's my book now, with what I wanted in my book. So either you say, okay, these guys are right, and I shouldn't be doing that. I've seen so many people doing this. No, get up.
Fantastic. I think bounce back ability, as I used to call it, is a great way to finish it. And I agree. Resilience, it's about keeping going along that journey. Nicolas, it's been a pleasure to talk to you about both your experience and how that applies in the current world of AgenticAI.
Thank you very much. Pleasure is all mine, believe me.
Thank you.